Hello, everyone. I've heard many times that Vienna's the city of music, but I've always thought that Leipzig has an equally interesting and in many ways more interesting history of music. I've been there myself, enjoyed the city, and I'm just thrilled that we have two members of the quartet with us now to talk about the Leipzig String Quartet and the city of Leipzig. Thomas Buning is second violin with the string quartet, and Matthias Moosdorf is the cellist with the Leipzig String Quartet. When was the Leipzig quartet founded? Which year?
It was in 1988. At this time we were students on the music academy. Yes, and we started together to play string quartet. Yeah.
Now, 1988 in Eastern Germany, in Leipzig, that was an interesting time, as they say. Can you tell us what it was like playing string quartets when dramatic things were happening in the street outside?
It was not so dramatic in that time. So
no?
The look from the point of view from now, it's much more different than we all expected. We were normal students, we finished school, and we had a lot of world-renowned orchestras, Dresdner Staatskapelle, Gewandhaus, Leipzig, and some other orchestra. And of course, when you have practiced for 10 or 15 years with your instrument, you are interested to get an education in a music academy. And you wanted to have just a job in one of these orchestras. Of course, there was another reason, because you can, if you got a chair in such an orchestra, you can travel even to the Western world. And that might be the only thing what was very exotic when you study music, because music and sports, these two professions, were enormous, supported by the government of the former GDR. And I think, look at the Olympic Games tables, then most of the Olympic Games, first prize of gold medals, silver medals was Soviet Union, and second the former GDR.
Mm-hmm.
And not always because of doping.
Even cellists dope?
Oh, yeah, even cellists. Yeah, but the government had an interest to bring these people a bit out, yes, to show the world, hi, we are open, and we... Yeah.
Before you went to the Hochschule, I think it was in those days, the conservatory in Leipzig, did you go to special music schools?
Yes. Yes, it depends. Our wireless was in such a special. Me not. I was on a normal music school. Yes, and we started at normal age at 7 or 6, 7.
What we have to explain is that the support in education, in special education, so it means sport and music or theater or for young painters, you cannot compare with the possibilities now in each country of this world. Because when you start in the school, there were people, educated people, they were searching every new founded class to maybe figures. They could be a good swimmer, and the next one could be a boxer, and the next one could be a football player. And all these selected kids got an enormous support from the government. And if you are on the measurements that they expect, you got this support for 10 years, for 15 years, and at the end you are sometimes a star musician or star boxer or star, something like this. And the average, I teach in the music academy, in the same academy where I studied, and freedom is not all what the people wanted to have in that times, but the average of education was 2 times higher than we have it now.
because now the students are very free. They can decide, oh, I want to study in London or in Paris or in New York. But it's not only the city where you study, it depends of the teacher you got.
Yes.
And you can get a bad teacher in New York or a good one in Leipzig. So it's...
Yes. One of the real advantages of this system is then that you went to the quartet went to the same music school at various points, and you would have absorbed a certain style, perhaps, a certain tradition, and some of you, I believe, studied with the same chamber music coach.
Yes, and even the violin teacher were the same. So we, for instance, I and viola player, so long he plays violin, we studied with the same teacher. And this teacher were the first chair in the Gewandhaus Orchestra, and he was the leader of the Gewandhaus Quartet. So this was a very strong tradition and connection between this Leipzig music.
Can you relate that sound then, or this sound, to the sound that the Gewandhaus Orchestra makes? Is there something shared?
Of course, and one reason is this sound has not been internationalized in the last 50 years. So when you compare orchestras, you will find in these times just a few, they protected the sound coming from generations away.
Yes.
Under this orchestras, maybe Vienna Philharmonic, special tradition. So you can see in this orchestra, now there is on the chair the son, but the father has the same position, and the grandfather has the same position. And you will find it just in Vienna, in Dresden, in Leipzig, and in maybe 3 or 4 other orchestras. And of course, it helps a lot to create a special sound and to protect this sound against, I call it internationalism, that you invite people, okay, they play the violin wonderful, they come from Shanghai, and the neighbor comes from Chicago. Yeah. At the end, it is not special. It's a comparing sound. You cannot realize, is it Havana, or is it Moscow, or is it Shanghai, or maybe an emir in Qatar can buy for some good musician. Is that a good orchestra? I don't believe it.
I remember vividly interviewing Kurt Masur, and at that time, he was directing the orchestra. It must have been early 90s. He said that at that moment, 85% of the musicians in the Gewandhaus Orchestra had been to the Leipzig Hochschule, to the music academy. Yes. So that tradition is very special. Even this
Hochschule was founded by Mendelssohn Bartholdy.
Yes.
And why? Because Mendelssohn wants to have an orchestra academy. He was the conductor of the Gewandhaus, and he said, how can we force the education, musical education for my orchestra? Let's found a music academy. And so it was the first music academy founded in Germany.
And still alive.
Yeah, and still alive.
This academy.
But as far as the orchestra goes, the tradition must be changing, I suspect, because the political equal rights sort of opportunity means that the auditions now have to be open to everybody. Yes. Doesn't it? Not just from Germany, but from the European Union. Mm-hmm. So more and more musicians from outside the tradition are coming into the orchestra. Do you hear a difference at all?
Not yet, but no, really, it's a.
They do a lot, but it's not so dangerous. When you look to the Vienna Philharmonic, for example, 10 years ago, somebody asked the same question and said, "Could you believe that in 10 years you are not only men in this orchestra, even girls or ladies?" And I thought, no, never, never. And now I think they have between 3 and 8 ladies in an orchestra.
That's all.
Yeah, that's all. But that's progress. Let's just talk a little bit about the Gewandhaus Orchestra, because this is not only the largest orchestra in the world, it's also pretty much the oldest orchestra. Certainly, I think it is the oldest orchestra, isn't it?
No,
no?
The oldest is Dresdner Staatskapelle.
Really?
It's older.
The court orchestra. Yes.
Dresden Staatskapelle.
Yeah. Well, you're about an hour and a half away from Dresden,
Yes.
and your orchestra was founded by Tilman, I think.
Tilman.
Oh, yes. So, why is it so big? Can you tell me there are, what, 200 members of the orchestra?
And now I think 117 or 70 or something. Yeah, it has to do with the 3 places where the orchestra plays. It plays at the Gewandhaus, the building Gewandhaus. Then they play in the opera. It's the opera orchestra, and they play in the Thomas Church. Cantates.
Bach's church.
Bach, yes, yeah. It's Bach's church. Yeah. So they need a really big orchestra to do all these 3 things sometimes at the same day.
So it's really 3 orchestras in a way. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Has the quartet, or have you as individual musicians, played at Bach's church, the Thomaskirche?
Yes.
Often.
Often. Yeah.
Often. How does that make you feel?
Don't expect too much for us, because we live in this city such a long time. It's quite normal, but it isn't normal. If you see the grave there, so it's special. But maybe if it came from somebody from outside, he is really touched, because it's the first time he came to this wonderful church and see the place where Bach is. So it is special.
But Bach is looking at you, and Mendelssohn is looking at you.
Yeah, that's it. Always great composers looking at you in Leipzig, because they were all there.
We can count it. It's much more. It's Gustav Mahler, for example, wrote the first symphony in Leipzig. The song of the European Community, Freude schöner Götterfunken, used by Beethoven. This poem was wrote in Leipzig by Schiller when he studied there. Brahms, most of the first performances of symphonies and Deutsche Requiem, first piano concerto, was first performed in Leipzig. Reger was music director in the University of Leipzig. Bruckner, first performances from most of the symphonies with Gewandhaus Orchestra. Schumann studied in Leipzig, married in Leipzig, was teaching on the Music Academy. Mendelssohn was there.
So on.
Mendelssohn premiered 3 of his symphonies, Schumann's symphonies in Leipzig.
And even of the younger generation, Edward Grieg studied in Leipzig, Leos Janáček studied in Leipzig, Erwin Schulhoff studied in Leipzig. I think you can count in the first row of the composers maybe 20 or 25 people just related to Leipzig. That's why the first newspaper in 1650 was published in Leipzig. And even for the publishing companies until the Second World War, 95% of every German-speaking newspaper, book, music, just paper, was published or printed in Leipzig. 95%.